The big hand for errors, applause for mistakes. Without them we wouldn't be here. Let's hear it.
18th of July 2016. We have a guest here in the studio. It's Paul Stephen Stone. Paul, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
And what we will be doing today is continuing our comment on the state of the nation, the political conflicts, the lack of integrity, the crisis that seems to be unending, and perhaps a look at an explanation for some of these structures, according to Noam Chomsky, who wrote in his book Requiem for the American Country.
Dream.
American Dream, thank you. About the 10 principles which the ruling elites use to move this crisis forward. But first, Paul, I believe you have a blog that we will be getting a look at. Could you explain that?
I have well, you folks are politically astute, I'm sure, and you know that that Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee have basically stolen the election. There's a wide body of thought that sees Bernie Sanders as actually having won in California, which she won supposedly 56 to 42 or something like that. They now estimate that he won 69 to 31%. That it was that much of a landslide.
Wow.
So you can think about how many votes had to be rigged, suppressed, or thrown out, because hundreds of thousands of votes were just thrown out into the trash. So there's a strong body of thought and a strong cadre of thinkers who believe that this election has been a total fraud. And it's not just in California, it's been consistently from the very beginning, starting with Iowa, actually. People have video of people, Hillary Clinton's people, not counting Sanders votes in the caucuses. So I wrote a piece, because what's happening now is that essentially the Democratic Party is trying to extort, frighten, blackmail people who supported Bernie into voting for Hillary, supporting Hillary, saying that you will be responsible for Trump's presidency if, in fact, you don't vote for Hillary. So essentially, there are a lot of people like myself that are very angry about this and will never vote for Hillary. I'm one of these never Hillary people. And that's a fairly lot. The media is reporting a sizable percentage of Bernie supporters having gone on over to Hillary. And I question whether or not that's accurate. The media has been absolutely complicit in this whole fraud business because they've ignored it. I guess that's as complicit as the media can get without actually falsifying results themselves. The AP actually did that when they came out and declared Hillary the winner the night before the California primary. Anybody that truly believes that they're living in an honest, clean democracy has to be totally depressed, saddened, disheartened by what's happened here the last, how long is the primary season, 4 or 5 months? It's embarrassing. So I wrote a piece that I posted online the other day in response to somebody basically saying, come on, Bernie supporters, stop acting like children. You know, basically saying it's time now to get behind the party candidate, who I don't believe is Hillary. I think it's Bernie anyway. But so I wrote this in response to that. And you'll have to put it up there for me to
Let's do that.
Read. Dear Democratic machine, I hear your argument that we have to vote for Hillary or risk elevating a bloated fascist demagogue to the presidency. Stop trying to guilt us. We who voted for Bernie will never vote for Hillary. This cynical argument essentially plays the game you and your candidate are trying to foist on everyone. If you care about the fate of the country, the world, and its future, vote for the lesser of two evils. I abhor and reject this argument in light of Hillary's stealing the Democratic nomination. There is no way I can convince myself I should put the country ahead of my own personal feelings when Hillary put herself and her ambitions ahead of everything and everyone. She's the one who placed the country in jeopardy. She's the one who created the risk of a Trump presidency, and she did it by thwarting the votes and intentions of a majority of Democratic voters. She's the one who created this false choice of voting for her or the devil, though she's certainly not the only one complicit in the crime. Can you scroll it a little?
Sure.
I blame Obama for not stepping in to stop the election fraud, which he could have done at any point in the process. I blame every Democratic Party member who took part in the fraud and didn't blow the whistle. I blame the FBI and Loretta Lynch for allowing Hillary to walk when she should have been jailed. I blame everyone in the mainstream mediocrity that refused to report on Hillary's blatant and pervasive election fraud. I certainly will not blame anyone who refuses to vote for a criminal who stole the Democratic nomination. She sold her soul to win the presidency. She's the one to blame for what happens as a result. I think that's, yeah.
Wow.
So that's it.
Powerful statement. It's a powerful statement, Paul.
Thank you.
It's a statement that is appropriate for the crime that's been going on and stealing this election at a time in which just another occasion of an election being stolen, similar to the Bush-Gore election in 2000.
Well, this is a lot more cynical and jaded because this is the Democratic Party disenfranchising its own members, its own participants. Bush-Gore was stealing the votes and suppressing votes from the other party.
Right.
So I find this a lot more cynical. And in fact, I've written a piece called Brand Suicide, the destruction of the Democratic brand in 2016. And I think what's going to happen is that this was actually, it was a serious self-inflicted wound. And I think the Democratic Party will not recover. They will not, if they continue to elbow Bernie out of the picture in this presidential season, there are people that would never go back to them. And we'll see where things evolve. But I think they've absolutely crapped on their brand. And the other thing is that this is the presidency of the United States. Do we want somebody in that role who will crap all over democracy, will suppress and kill and switch votes? I don't think, she's not worthy of the post, of the position. And, I think it's really, it's tragic. It's tragic. If this was France, we'd all be in the streets. But
I agree.
We're too focused on watching Game of Thrones tonight, so we don't want to go out into the streets.
It's bitter, but I think it's true to a large extent. I think we've lost many of us have lost the wish or the ability to get out onto the streets and to make our, not only a frustration, but our anger clear in the face of continuing rupture of every ethical and moral position regarding an election. Mm-hmm. We grew up in school being told, saluting the flag, being told that this is the oldest democracy, living democracy, well, maybe Greece is. But anyway, the best democracy on the face of the earth, that we were the protectors of freedom. And all my grade school understandings and visions have totally been disproven by these people. They're thugs. They're just thugs. They've stolen the election, and they'll steal anything they have to steal to get their candidate in. And I think the Clintons, I would love to see the Clintons get what they deserve. Bill and Hillary. So the question is that this type of criminal activities has not come about overnight. It's a process, and Chomsky looks at it as a process, as I think others who look at the reality of our state of the nation and its momentary degree of disintegration and the killings that continue, mass shootings that continue in one city after another or repeated in cities, a tweet by Donald Trump is in reference to this, and I'd like to read that now. Trump tweeted, apparently in reference to the killings in Baton Rouge, which took place, I believe, yesterday. He tweeted, "We are trying to fight ISIS, and now our own people are killing our police, period. Our country is divided and out of control," end of the tweet. I think the statement that Trump brought forward is complete demagoguery and divisive, as Trump has proven to be time and time again. By using the statement, "We are trying to fight ISIS," he separates himself as though he were part of the contingency actually in the battleground. I don't believe Trump was in the military at any time. I don't believe that he is qualified to make the statement that he belongs to the cadre trying to fight ISIS. I believe that is a military question and an ideological question. But if it's an ideological question, the second part of his statement is equally questionable. And now our own people are killing our police. I think this is a reasonable mistake of the reality of the shootings which have been taking place in city after city in the United States, and the one in Baton Rouge, to which he responded with this quote, was again a black, this time again a veteran, who had been stationed in Iraq, and who then took up a weapon to kill police officers. The statement by Trump saying, "And now our own people are killing our police," how would the identity of Donald Trump be with a black Marine? What would the degree of identity be with Donald Trump to allow him to make the decision, our own people? I don't know that Trump has a program to work with Black Lives Matter regarding their justifiable complaints regarding the killing of 1,000 blacks by police officers in the United States every year, and a reality that, if I'm correct, that has been going on for at least 20 years. In addition to that, the question of killing veterans, the individual who did the shooting in Baton Rouge was a veteran of Iraq. The question of killing veterans, assassinating them apparently, again, as was in the case in Dallas, using a bomb, a driven bomb to get close to where he was hiding, and then detonate the bomb to kill him rather than give this individual an opportunity in any way to face trial. That seems to be the politic that the police are following, not to let anyone who is caught up in one of these shootings have the opportunity to having their statements heard by the public in a trial. I think this is the tactic that is being used. And again, at the end of that, and now our own people are killing our police, and the last part of the statement by Trump is, "Our country is divided and out of control," end quote. The division which is taking place is being driven forward by Donald Trump in his repeated comments of this kind. He's divisive in nature and continues looking for divisive statements, such as accusing all Mexicans across the border as being potential rapists, or demanding that, or insinuating that all Muslims could be part of a terrorist group and that should be subjected to a questionnaire, signing a questionnaire in reference to their loyalty. So it's the divisiveness of Trump again and again, which he brings forward in this statement in an effort to defend his divisive statements. Is there anything part of that you would...
A couple of things. One, just so we set the record straight, Trump went to a military school.
I didn't know that. As a
student, just as, they have these military academies.
As a high school student?
Yeah, yeah. That's not military experience, but he's had some...
training.
Yes, he had the scent of the Army in the air. But I mean, it's been the strategy, and it's sort of almost a default position of the oligarchy to actually create division and have us be afraid of each other. If we're afraid of the blacks, if we're afraid of the Hispanics or the Muslims, then we're not going to pay any attention to what's really happening around here. The whole thing is meant to be kind of a sideshow that catches our attention. I think that's a natural response for Trump to sort of blame, and he knows that the people he wants to appeal to are going to take umbrage at blacks shooting policemen and not see the bigger picture. And the other thing that I would say about all this violent, explosive stuff happening at the lower end of the economic ladder is that's what happens when you squeeze all the money out of the lower economic classes and the middle classes, and it all goes to the upper classes. There's no money. They've starved the government, so the government can't provide any kind of a safety net anymore. And the one that they provide is just in tatters. And so there's unrest, and what unrest does is it creates more need for the people that are in charge of keeping the peace to start looking at the people that are getting restive as enemies, as natural enemies. I don't think it's a racial thing as much as an economic thing, even though the racial aspect of it makes it easier for people to choose who they're potentially.
It's a better fear instrument too.
Yeah, exactly. So, when I was a kid in the 50s, there was a movie called Mau Mau. And I remember it was particularly frightening to me.
About Africa, right? About the Mau Mau themselves.
It was about the black population in, I think it was Rhodesia.
Right.
What was then Rhodesia, Zimbabwe now. An uprising. But it was done with a lot of machete killings and things of that sort. So it was very gory and very scary stuff. And I think that kind of thing was emblematic of what, if whites are afraid of blacks, they kind of go back to that primal level. Anyway, it's a problem that's not going to be decided by sucking all the money out of government and killing all the programs that can help people climb out of poverty. It is an economic issue that we're dealing with.
I agree.
So, and then the other part of it is that us comfortable whites, myself included, aren't going to get off our asses and man the barricades. It's just not going to happen. We know that nobody's going to come and take our retirement pay or our HBO subscription. And, we're going to be able to be comfortable and live our life. We've already seen how this thing works. If you're middle class and relatively non-aggressive, you can live your life quietly, have a good family life, and then move on your way. We know that. So we don't feel threatened. Some of us don't feel threatened by it the way that people that are trying to crawl out of the gutter or out of poverty would. So it's very interesting times. And the reason why nobody will allow Bernie to become the leader that he was meant to be, and he's already become, he's totally taken them by surprise. They would have killed him at birth if they knew what would happen with this particular election. But what he's done is he's absolutely challenged the whole structure. The structure is rotten, it's corroded, it's corrupted, and he's challenged it. He's talking about a bottom-up grassroots revolution. He's talking about people getting something that they need to succeed in life, whether it's health care for everybody or whether it's a free college tuition, free college career. He's there to say the government should work for the people, take responsibility for the welfare of the people. And that's been basically trod on. It's been taken down, it's been pulled apart. Franklin Delano Roosevelt's legacy, has been under attack with these billionaires for, 30, 40 years.
It's true.
So, so what we're seeing is kind of a quiet class warfare, essentially. And we have been made war upon for the last 40 or 50 years. We just haven't known it. And that's what Bernie has done. He says, wake up, the government can do more, should do more. This isn't trying to take away your manhood to make it so your child can go to college. I mean, that's the other thing that the oligarchy does. I don't need somebody to take care of me. I don't need a government to make my way. I can do it myself. That's bullshit. In this day and age, you need a government to sort of make the waters calm and allow everybody to have an equal chance of succeeding. It's so unequal now that what was doable 20 years ago is no longer doable. You don't make enough to survive with one fast food job or working as a janitor. I mean, the cost of living is too expensive. What does Cambridge cost to live in now?
Oh my God.
It's crazy. And if you didn't buy a house when it was affordable in Cambridge, you're damn lucky if you can afford to live here anymore.
It's true.
We sold our condo. I could never afford to come back here. Yes, I left Cambridge, folks.
Well, would you? We have a lot of viewers who are interested in finding out how things are with you. Would you be willing to say something about your experiences?
It's a little early to really talk much about it. I'm not missing Cambridge hardly at all. I have a lot of friends in Cambridge. I have a lot of concerns about things. Cambridge has got its own set of problems related to money. Money is basically corrupting their government, as I see it. People will argue about this, but just because they made it legal for city councilmen to take money from developers then vote on their developments doesn't mean it isn't corrupt.
It's true.
Yeah.
Just because it's legal doesn't mean it's not corrupt.
Right. And it undermines democracy. It undermines the very foundation of what we're all about. I mean, they're going to be building this mega
Right across the street.
Right across the street. See that sky over there? You won't see that in a few years.
I think we can get this.
Can you?
I think we can get this building. Sure, we can get this building on the screen right now. If they'll let us do
And
that.
even if you believe that building should have been built, I have to say, even if I believed it, I would still say I don't want people voting on it who've already benefited from the generosity of the developer who's is driving it. He's not trying to be a good guy and do the best thing for the community, no matter what he says. He's looking to make a profit. In fact, he's got a real estate investment trust. He's trying to show has got more value than the next guy. So even though you can legally get away with it in Massachusetts, doesn't mean it's corrupt. It's not corrupt, excuse me. Oh, they're coming to get me.
So it doesn't look like I'll be able to get that up on the screen. I don't really know the reason for it.
Well, there's no camera pointing at it, is there?
Oh, we've got the possibility theoretically right here, but it doesn't look like it's going to respond.
Oh. Well, it's okay. People know where the Quest property was.
Quest Optic.
Optic?
It was Quest Optic, I believe that's what they're called.
They were
Quest Diagnostic.
Diagnostics. Yes,
Right.
they were a testing lab. Yeah. Anyway,
How about that? That did happen then. Maybe everything is changing around now.
yeah.
That's good.
We're still here. Don't go anywhere. If you can hear my voice, tap your desk twice. Well,
So as you were saying
I don't remember.
about Quest Diagnostic, about that 22-story building that they're about to put into the building process to demolish Quest Diagnostic and put up a 22-story apartment building.
Which was voted through and basically set aside the 85-foot height limits, which is basically an 8-story building that were in place. And, maybe it'll be a good thing for Cambridge, maybe it won't be a good thing for Cambridge, but...
It's certainly going to make Cambridge a lot more expensive because...
Yes, it'll have that ripple effect. The neighborhood right behind it is Area 4, the Port, now they call it, where I lived. And there are a lot of poor people of color in that neighborhood, and whether they know it or not, and the representative that they all vote for is Denise Simmons, who benefited from the largesse of the developers just like everybody else, even though she's mayor now. I don't know. There's something in me that really rankles at corruption. I don't quite understand it. Well, I can't accept it. I just can't accept it.
It's your 60s upbringing.
Perhaps.
It's the idea that corruption should not be tolerated.
Right. I should have been a folk singer.
Well, maybe you are. You as a writer, a blogger, an author.
I've written songs too. I wrote a Bernie song.
You did, yeah.
I did. Rise again, rise again.
Great, it was a great starting lyric.
Yeah.
And I think Sanders Group needs a song, a rallying song.
Well, unfortunately, the fellow that was writing the music stepped back because Hillary had just been anointed, and he didn't want to spend. It takes time to write a song.
Of course.
So, anyway, the middle class is broken. Now it's time to mend. They've taken all the cookies, left you only crumbs again. Vote for Bernie Sanders so the middle class at last can rise again.
Terrific.
There it is.
That's terrific lyrics. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. I'll put that with my other unsung songs.
No, I can well understand. I'm sure our viewers can understand the fact that being given a sense of justice and truth, and if we want to say this, the American way, what's happened and what continues to happen in the United States in the last year, the last 20 years, in the last 25 years is a travesty in a lot of ways. And I think the resentment is there because it's become clear to the poor and working poor that it's a class issue, that the class nature of the divisions is becoming more and more apparent. There are ruling elites. They have created an oligarchy where the top 1% or a fraction of 1% is reaping all the benefits in the economic transactions and bankrupting the poor by staging one economic meltdown after another. The dot-com bubble under the Clinton administration, the Savings and Loan Association under the first Bush administration, the subprime mortgage meltdown under George Bush administration. It's a continued ripoff, and I think more and more portions of the population are recognizing this. Well,
the sad thing is you're not going to read about it in the newspaper. You're not going to hear about it on TV. There's no concern on the part of the mainstream media to report accurate news. The New York Times was all the news that fits or fit to print, and it's no longer that. For them to have ignored Bernie's, the the travesty of the election, of the Democratic nomination process, just basically shows you that they're in the pocket of the corporate oligarchy. And so you can't trust it. Go online, get your news anywhere else, but the Boston Globe is just as bad as the New York Times, which is just as bad as Fox News. You can't trust them. They're all censoring what you're getting for news.
And they're not exposing the blatant contradictions. For instance, the exit poll statistics and the vote results, as you've mentioned on numerous occasions, correctly so.
Oh yeah, and in fact, interestingly enough, it's the media that basically paid for the exit polls and then concealed them, basically didn't want to share them. When they were forced to share them under some sort of court process, what they did was they canceled the rest of the exit polls. So California and New Jersey didn't have exit polls as a result of that. So it's really sad. It's very sad. It's a weird place that we live in right now. But the news, as well as everything else, is controlled. You have no idea of what's happening in the world. You think you do, but all you have is an idea of what they want you to know. That's what you have an idea about, I think.
So the question that many individuals have, myself included, is what are the underlying principles, the underlying concepts which the Democratic and Republican parties use to continue to move an agenda, an unwritten agenda, or at least unwritten or unknown to the general public, but known to those Republican, Democratic operatives who happen to be in power, and then structure an economic meltdown, a war, some type of divisive action, stealing of elections. And Chomsky has come up with these. We mentioned that earlier, but the point I'd like to enter into before that is it's said that Donald Trump is something entirely new, unknown. There's never been anyone like him in American politics, and it's so unusual it's difficult to call. My take on this is it's just an aspect of neo-fascism. The idea behind this would be that a neo-fascist is an ultra-nationalist. And the statements I think that we find from Donald Trump are ultra-nationalistic. His idea of make America great again seems to fit precisely in to this idea. Also, neo-fascism is an authoritarian structure, an authoritarian governing system which is anti-intellectual and theoretically anti-capitalistic.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
Well, I said that neo-fascism would be anti-capitalistic. It's anti-capitalistic to the idea that under fascism, not all capitalistic agencies or structures or corporations are treated the same. Those corporations which have a leadership role, biotechnology, for instance, or defense projects, or the oil industry, are given a particular type of subsidies so that the decision making puts them at the top of the priority scale, and then the other corporations, whatever they might be, steel production, the mining of natural resources, or production of automobiles, would not have the same amount of priority. In other words, they structure a priority and support that. It's not the balance of or the free play of capitalistic principles, but rather the prioritizing of certain.
No, absolutely. It's not free market. Absolutely. Right. And that I agree with you. I do think that I think fascism is basically, capitalism is good until it runs under its own steam. As soon as it runs away, as soon as you get a breakaway capitalistic society, you have an oligarchy. You have people that are making a lot of money and using that money to control the levers of power.
Do you think that's happening now?
Absolutely, absolutely. Fascism is just another device that people in control would use. I do think that they have the point of view that making money is a good thing. Anybody that can make money, that can find a way to make money, as far as they're concerned legally, as long as they don't take it from them, is cool. But I think unbridled capitalism can very often just be piracy. You know, and in fact, that's kind of what happens is as soon as unbridled capitalism gets a full head of steam, they get control of the government, and then the government basically loots, whether it's by, you know, making it harder for some sectors of the country, the economy to make money, or making it easier for others to make money. So I think fascism is, we talked about this earlier, I think Donald Trump will say anything that gets him a laugh, gets a rise out of the audience. I think he stumbled upon this fascist approach because he's a white guy with a lot of money. So naturally, he comes to the point where, okay, I don't want anybody taking any of my money away, and I don't trust anybody. But I don't think he's as much a fascist as just another, you know, corporate pig at the trough.
I think that the development, Paul, of stages, it's like we can see the tendency, we can see the decision-making, stealing of an election, the launching of a war under evidence which is not secure, not even likely, and we're driven along a path so that the public generally gets the idea that we're in danger from terrorists, we're in danger from minorities interested coming into the country or attacking us at some point because they're not getting a fair shake. And generally, these ideas lead to a concept that we need stronger control of the population, stronger control of those who could endanger the system.
Right.
And I believe that leadership, particularly demagogues, particularly individuals who are intolerant, authoritarian structured, such as I consider Donald Trump to be absolutely in that category through his continued statements, would continue to grip and reach for mechanisms which 20 years ago the general population would not accept, but driven into a position of fear that they might accept. The calling out of a state of emergency, for instance, by Barack Obama, if the killings of police and the shootings continue in a city or in a state. I think those types of developments push forward on the idea of needing stronger control of the population. I think the use of police in the killings of 1,000 blacks a year, or the other statistic, the suicide of 20,000 veterans a year. Iraq and Afghanistan veterans kill themselves, suicide every year. 20,000. It's 22 a day. And this statistic has been going on for a while. The problem is that we don't have a sense of values about what part of the population deserves a protection of some kind. Veterans certainly do, but it seems to be just lip service. I don't see any politician.
It is lip service. It is totally lip service. They'll fight to improve improved benefits. Bernie's the only one that was able to get through a decent benefits package for
It's true.
veterans.
He was very successful with the Veterans Administration. in doing that.
Yeah. Well, to me, talking about concern for the veterans and sending soldiers out into an unnecessary war, they don't jibe.
Right.
Agreed. George should, if nothing else, George Bush should be tried for what he did to all those soldiers. How many soldiers and how many Iraqi civilians were killed needlessly in a war that had absolutely no rationale behind it except somebody. You make a lot of money when you have a war.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how many billions Halliburton made. I don't know how many billions armaments manufacturers made, replacing all those horrible weapons of destruction. But it's disgusting. It's horrible. And I think I'm really sort of saddened that we don't seem to see what's happening. The Patriot Act was a perfect example of how you use fear to control the population. And what's happening now with Black Lives Matter. Basically, Donald Trump and a lot of others are trying to delegitimize, what was a natural response to a very, very ridiculous and unnatural situation.
The killing of 1,000 blacks a year by police.
Yeah. Just the idea that we've had so many blacks incarcerated. For what? For what? For marijuana? For doing disservice to their bodies with other drugs? What the hell do we have to lock them up for? It's a country with a lot of problems, and if we don't start getting some honesty at the top and some basic real democracy and some real concern for the welfare of our citizens, we're going to end up in a place we don't want to be, and we're practically there already. We're the one that makes the most trouble on the globe. We create problems. We don't solve problems. We used to solve problems, but now we create the problems.
That's true.
The Middle East is a fire. It's totally destabilized because of us. And everybody wants. The Republicans want to protect Bush's name. He was horrible. He was a dunce. And what he and Cheney did is unforgivable because so many lives were ruined, and are still being ruined and put under a terrible shadow.
I agree completely, Paul. So if I could get back to this point that you mentioned, this Chomsky Requiem for American Dream. He mentioned 10 principles. Chomsky mentioned 10 principles. Perhaps I could just enumerate them and we could comment them. To reduce democracy is one principle that the ruling elites use to create a situation in which they have greater control at the end of one of the presidencies, either a Democratic or Republican presidency, than they had at the beginning of it. Reduce democracy. And the idea is reduce democratic tendencies, democratic activities, democratic actions. One of them could certainly be looked at in this context is the fact that the press does not work. You mentioned that earlier today, that the press is not doing its job in enumerating why the primary, or why and how the primary election process was rigged.
That too happened under Clinton, where they basically stopped regulating the ownership of the media. It used to be that you couldn't control a newspaper and a TV station in the same market.
Right.
And they basically threw all that out, and money came in, and a lot of people made a lot of money, and I think six corporations now basically control the media.
I think it's true, yeah.
Clinton didn't do us any favors. Clinton was also responsible for the mass incarceration of blacks. He's responsible for NAFTA. And another thing that the press, do you realize that the TPP that everybody's talking about right now was negotiated entirely in secret?
Yes.
And so nobody knew what this thing was, and they didn't want to reveal it.
No,
still.
it's true.
And WikiLeaks had to reveal some of it, and other places things were revealed. But how do you have a trade agreement that's negotiated in secret?
That's a good question.
It's because the corporations were basically negotiating for what they wanted.
Right.
They want to be able to exploit children. They want to be able to say the hell with the environment. They want to basically not have any controls. And what they're putting in place with this TPP, as I understand it, is a system that is basically removes sovereignty from whatever
That's true.
whatever locales are
Right.
you know, this trade stuff is going on. And why would America give up its sovereignty? You know, why would we say you can mess up the environment here and we can't stop you? We can only get sued by you if we try to stop you.
It's true.
It's just and Hillary was part of the negotiating of that, and she called it the gold standard. Now it was politically expedient. Excuse me.
I know the idea that Paul is bringing forward is absolutely true. The attorneys, of course, that negotiate the TPP, that write what's in the various articles, of course, it's not secret from them, but it's secret from the public and secret from the politicians until such time as they have to vote on it.
Right, right.
And
by then it's like a train coming into the station.
Right.
Try to stop it.
right.
Very hard. And I think Hillary is totally disingenuous when she says that she's against it now. I think what you'll have is if she gets into power, within a few months, she will say that she insisted on some changes that we will not really understand or comprehend. And she'll say, now I like it. I've taken out the things that I thought were working against Americans, and now I like it. And she'll sign the goddamn thing. What do you think's been happening with Obama?
I have the opinion, and have had the opinion of Barack Obama for a very long time, that the idea of him studying constitutional law, teaching constitutional law at University of Chicago, and then not implementing the changes to the killing of Americans and the incarceration in Guantanamo as being a clear indication of what his political background is. I think he's an incredible opportunist, and I think he's very, very, dangerous.
I never thought of him as somebody that was a pawn of the oligarchy, and now I've come to think of him that way. Supporting the TPP, endorsing Hillary while she was still under investigation. I think he's absolutely lost a lot of his credibility. I think he's walking away from it. He's just leaving his credit. She's destroyed his legacy in terms of foreign affairs. I mean, she was basically selling arms to anybody that donated to the Clinton Foundation under his watchful, gaze, I assume. It's I don't understand. I thought I expected a lot more from Obama.
Of course.
And I'm terribly disappointed, and more so every day as we move towards the end of his tenure. What are you going to do? I didn't see him as a pawn the way I see him now. And they had Biden ready to step in if Hillary, was somehow put aside. They weren't going to let Bernie take over the nomination. So.
And it's really, Bernie Sanders is a new dealer. Chomsky has defined him as a new dealer. The positions that he has brought forward would be completely acceptable by the Eisenhower administration.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's that we have come so far away from principles that were intact as economically feasible and justifiable 60 years ago.
Yeah. Well, just think, the EPA was created under Nixon's watch. Now
Under Nixon, right?
You'd never have a Republican administration that would allow anything that would interfere with commerce, as they see it, even if commerce is choking the population with
And
foul air.
TPP is an example of that, right?
Exactly. The thing about going back to Trump, I think we Americans are so starved for anything that sounds authentic. We've been fed these horrible political sound bites with very little substance and maybe a lot of flash. So anybody that comes along and seems to be talking from his beliefs, which Trump certainly sometimes appears, because his beliefs change every half hour.
It's true.
So it doesn't really matter what he says. But for a while, like when he was talking, I actually had this moment when I heard him talk about George Bush being responsible for a horrible mess in the Middle East. Somebody said the truth. That was the truth, and he spoke the truth. I never expect a Republican to speak.
Nobody else has said that.
Right. Even the Democrats won't say that. They don't have the guts to say it. And then you have people like Elizabeth Warren who totally betray their progressive ideology by supporting Hillary and basically stepping on Bernie's fingers as he's reaching for the next ledge.
Good analogy.
I lost my respect for her. I have no respect for Elizabeth Warren. I think she's an opportunist.
That's sad.
It is sad. It's very sad. I felt very much betrayed by it. She could have made a real difference in Bernie's campaign if she chose to, and really a real difference in the ideals that she espouses. But she chose to sit and wait for things to clarify, and then she supported Hillary, just as I said, stepping on Bernie's fingers as he's reaching for the ledge.
Well, she is apparently Hillary's attack dog in reference to Donald Trump. That's apparently what the press is saying.
Right.
That her function will be. But as nasty as Hillary Clinton can be, I don't think she really needs someone else to, say nasty things.
President always wants to have somebody else be the attack dog. I think what this is Elizabeth Warren just sort of auditioning for the role. Her going after Trump the way she did. Why? I think she just wants the job. I think. Good luck to you, Elizabeth. In fact, I wouldn't mind seeing you leave now. She's lost my support. She's lost a lot of people's support. A lot of people unfriended her on their Facebook. I unfriended her as soon as she endorsed Hillary.
It's a nasty business, politics.
It is. It is a nasty business. But, it's not necessarily... Sometimes people can vote the way you wish they hadn't, or can go for a stance on an issue that at some level you can understand it. What she did with Hillary I found totally unacceptable, and I could not understand it other than grandiosity or whatever, but self-service actually. I was really, she had me so high that I had no place to go, but really it was a pretty big fall. So.
We idealize, I think, politicians when they're basically pragmatists and...
Wouldn't you have wanted her to say that things happened in this state election? Our primary,
of course,
absolutely.
I agree completely.
Was crapped around with just like every other state. The Democratic primary was stolen by Hillary, with Bill going to different election stations and doing all this stuff. Votes were flipped. There's just a lot that happened that Secretary Galvin apparently had no interest in dealing with. Because this whole state is a Democratic machine. It's a very progressive end of the Democratic machine, but it's still a Democratic machine.
I'll never really understand why they have a Republican governor then and keep electing Republican governors with a Democratic base like this.
Well, I think for the very reason that they don't trust the party has basically created a nice nest for itself.
Yeah.
So it's good to have a watchdog from the other party. If only because if no one's watching, then what you expect to happen will happen. There's no doubt about it.
So would you be willing, Paul, at the end of the show, we've got just a few minutes now, to say about the pleasures of living somewhere else but Cambridge, Massachusetts?
Well, I can't talk about someplace else other than Plymouth, where I'm living now. We have a cottage on the side of a pond. And birds are singing all the time, and moths are flying in legions. It's gypsy moth season over in Plymouth, and it's been horrible.
They're here as well. You see a lot of them.
Oh God, the caterpillar stage was just, you'd sit in the woods and you'd hear just dropping all the time. Just little pellets would drop. But
You're in nature. You're right in nature.
I am in nature, and my wife is feeling like she's been liberated. And she grew up in Andover when it was a lot more rural than it is now, and she loves nature, and we both love nature. And every once in a while, I'll be walking my dog on the roads around our house, and I'd be coming home, and it's a dirt road. And I'd look at a scene, just looking at the road leading up to my house, and it would be like something out of Tom Sawyer.
Beautiful.
It could be. I mean, if you don't see the houses, there's nothing
Exactly.
to, right. It's timeless.
Walden Pond.
Walden Pond.
Well, it's terrific you found a place like that. That's wonderful.
Yeah, we feel very grateful.
It's a lot of work getting there, isn't it? It was a tremendous effort selling your place here and then moving there and readjusting and...
Yeah, well, the big thing, and it's starting to weigh, is we have to move 3 times. Now it's going to be 4 times because we thought we'd go to the winter rental, but we're not going to have that for a month, so we have to find another place. We have to move out so that they can tear down and build a new structure where the cottage is. So there's a lot of dislocation and trying to figure out what do we need to take with us, what do we need in storage. Fortunately, prices in Cambridge were so obscene that we'll be able to afford to, get moving, pay for moving or pay for whatever living expenses we have to pay. But it's somewhat disruptive. I would love to have just found another place that we could move to, but we love where the cottage is. It's just, and you're going to come teach me how to freshwater fish.
Yes, I've made that offer. I've had some experience of freshwater fishing, having grown up in South Florida, and I'd be pleased and honored to take that opportunity. Maybe we can use some of those caterpillars then, but for those nature lovers. Paul Stevenstone, thanks ever so much for coming by the studio and
thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
We have a few seconds now just to mention the reality of a class society is not an illusion. It's a reality and has been. The realization of that will help us moving forward. Have a good evening.